Wintertime can be some of the most challenging fishing of the year, and it's not necessarily because of the cold weather, it's because of the winds. As these fronts move in, you're definitely going to get some more wind that builds up, and it can be frustrating at times whenever you get a long run of windy days and you just can't get out on the water. So what I want to do in this video is give you some ideas of what you can do to get on the water even though the winds are up there. As these fronts come through, that can be some of the best fishing, especially the beginning of that front, but whenever it's windy, it might not be safe to get out there. So what I'd like you to do is start taking a look at areas where you can launch in wind protection and fish in wind protection without having to cross open bodies of water. And a lot of times these areas are where these fish are going to be anyway. So if you think about it like the back creeks, if you can find areas that have launching points that are in the creeks and you don't have to go out in that open water, then you can get out on the water and be safe without having to deal with dangerous conditions. Now sometimes you might have to temper your expectations when we get out on the water on these windy days. You might not be able to get to go after your favorite species, but you should be able to find at least something that is willing to bite. Maybe sheep's head, maybe mangrove snapper, something along those lines, but at least we're able to get out on the water. Now some good places to look for some wind protection, if you're out in Texas, the back lakes and also the ICW, as long as that wind doesn't line up in the same direction as the ICW, you should be able to find some wind protection there. In Louisiana, as long as you don't have to cross big bodies of water, you should be able to get some wind protection in the marsh. Yeah, the marsh is a little bit low, you're not going to get total wind protection out there, but at least you won't have to deal with a lot of big waves in the backcountry. Now when it comes to the upper Gulf Coast states and Florida, a great place to look for wind protection is your feeder creeks and your residential canals. Residential canals are some of the best places that you can go to whenever it's windy to get the wind protection and find some feeding fish. And this is also true all up and down the East Coast. Those little feeder creeks that come out of the marsh and into these sounds are great places to look, as long as you can find a launching point where you can stay in the backcountry and you don't have to cross that big body of water to get to your fishing spot. Now when you find yourself fishing in these conditions, one of my favorite lures to use is going to be a paddle tail. Now the size of the paddle tail is going to be dependent on if it's prefrontal conditions or post-frontal. In prefrontal conditions, when the fish are feeding a little bit more aggressive, I'll go up to a larger size paddle tail like our mulligan. In post-frontal conditions, after those temperatures drop, I'll go down to the 2.0, which is our 3.5-inch paddle tail. Another time I'm going to use that 2.0 paddle tail is if I find myself having to cast directly into the wind. The smaller profile of the smaller lure will catch less air and you'll be able to cast it a lot further. And as far as rigging is concerned, I typically go up one size when it comes to the weight. If it's something that I'm normally throwing 1/8 of an ounce, I move up to 1/4 of an ounce. And if it's something I normally use 1/4 of an ounce, I'll move up to 3/8 of an ounce. That way I can stay better connected with the lure in these windy conditions. So if you're dealing with a run of bad windy weather like we are having right now as I'm recording this, and you can find an area that has some wind protection and you can stay in that wind protection, you can get some fishing done, and actually you can have some pretty good days out on the water. Just be sure to stay safe, temper your expectation, and be willing to change up if you need to get on a bite. So for more tips like this, be sure and check us out at saltstrong.com, and I hope to see you again soon.